Thank you all for coming here today. My name is Danihelka, and I will tell you today something about JSON Web Tokens. At the beginning, let me tell you that this is the technology that you can use even if you are Java developer, .NET developer, or Node.js. And at first, let me tell you something about the security. Security of the API, security of web applications that we are building. If you want to build some cool web application, here you are looking at the ACTUM Office plan. You will always have there some data that you want to keep secure. Data that you will allow to show only to the users who are authenticated. And if you want to have some authentication, you always need to ask for credentials, which means username and the password. First step of the security, always make sure that the data transfer of the secure data, which means when you are sending over the password to the server, make sure that the connection flows through the HTTPC. HTTPC means that the connection between the browser and the server is secure, and then there cannot be any man-in-the-middle attack, and this is the important first step to go. Then the way how to create the connection and how to communicate between client, which represents the browser, and the server, the basic thing could be basic out. How this works. With every request for some data, you need to pass username and password, and the server will respond with the data. But if you want another request, you need to pass the username and password again. This approach has some disadvantages, and those are you basically have to send the username and the password with every request. This is bad. You don't want to send the password every time, and also with the basic out, the username and password is always stored in some browser cache. It can be there like up to 15 minutes. The behavior is different in every browser, and for example, it's difficult to log out the user. The logout is basically when the session expires. Much more sophisticated solution is establish the communication between client and server over the auth too. At the beginning, I'm not requesting any specific private data, but I'm trying to authenticate myself. Also, I'm providing username and password, and this time server will respond with the token. This is authentication token. I will store it in my client, in my browser. I can store it as a cookie or into local storage of my browser, and then I will use this authentication token for requesting of the private data. And for any other request, I'm just passing the token, and I'm receiving the data as an authorized user. In out, this communication it's called like token-based authentication, but the out doesn't specify how your token should look like. And this presentation is about the JSON Web Tokens, which are one type of token. So now we know it's a token for authentication and authorization, and it's an industry standard. It's not something that we made up here in ACTUM. This is example how it looks like.
Clear. Sorry, can you read it?
Yeah, of course. And if you will look closely to this token, we can split it into three pieces. The first is header, payload, and signature. Let's take a look closer to those parts. In the header, there is some JSON object with the data, which is later base 64 encoded and the result you can see below. And in the header, there is only few important options like what type of token is it? It's JWT, and what algorithm will be used for making of the signature. I will talk about it in a minute. The most important piece of the token is the payload, the middle part, which is always the longest one. And here, I'm passing all the information about the authenticate user that I want to use later on the client or server side. Here I have information about myself. For example, I can have here specification what my role is, which I can use later for the authorization. And I can specify if I will be admin or user. And also you can see here is information about the expiration date when the token will expire. This whole JSON object, that's why it's called JSON Web Token, is also base 64 encoded, and this is the result of the JSON that you see above. And the last thing is the signature. Signature is for verifying that the data in the token are valid and has not been modified, and the signature is created on the server. You can create a signature when you concat the header and the payload, and you will salt it with the server secret. Secret is just some string on the server side that you should keep in the secret. And how to work with those JSON Web Tokens on the server side. So let's assume that you receive username and password, and you create the JSON Web Token, and for follow-up incoming request, every request contains this token, and you can, on the server side, at first you will verify that the signature is valid. And for example, if the client will try to modify the content, the signature would not be valid. So you can trust it on the server side that the user is who he claims to be. It's important, as I described previously, the secret that you choose. You have to keep it in private and never show it to others or to the client side. And so what's the difference between JSON Web Tokens and any other type of access tokens? The difference is that when you receive the client request with this token, you no longer need to look up into the database for the information about the user, because this information is already inside of that token. And there can be also like the role, which describes the authorization. So you can immediately reject the request, and you don't need to request the database. So it's very fast to verify the signature and authorize the user. When I should summarize what we learned today, so it doesn't matter what type of communication between client and server you will use. Just make sure that you will always make those communication through HTTPS protocol. It's good to use AUTH2 with the token-based authentication. And to increase your security, make sure that your tokens have some expiration time. And last but not least, when you are working with the server secrets, don't commit them to the GitHub. Just remove those private data completely from your code base and just set it on the production servers separately. Before I will say bye, make sure to visit website JWT.io, where there is interactive demo, it will help you to understand how JSON Web Tokens can work, and you can decode and encode tokens that you have. And if you are using Office ACTUM application, take a look in the browser, and you can see in the local storage there will be something called JWT, and you can see there your token. That's all.